right, everybody, welcome in. I'm Dr. Jim Cellini, and on today's episode, we're going to have a chat with one of my quote-unquote best friends on social media. I only say that this is the first time we're meeting, but we've had a lot of interactions online the last couple of years. Cat Henstridge, Dr. Henstridge, Cat the Vet. Welcome in. I look forward to talking to you today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
All
Yes,
right.
it is funny, isn't it? How you like connect with people online and then sort chatting, like you say, send a few messages behind the scenes, make a few comments on a few videos, and suddenly you've got like a whole new best friend from the other side of the world.
I
I've
know.
never picked your brains about neurology. I probably should have done at some point. I should have lent into that relationship, but
No.
yeah, I'll keep that one in the bag.
Yeah, no, that's totally fine. You can pick my brain about it anytime you want. I love talking about it. My first question to you today is, what made you get into social media to begin with? Because a lot of my colleagues at work who literally don't care about social media, dare I say 95% plus of veterinarians really don't care about social media, and they might actively even hate it. They always ask me, why do you want to do this? And I have my own reasons, but I was kind of wondering from your end, since you're so prolific, you've got over like 300,000, 400,000 followers across all the platforms. What made you want to start doing this to begin with? What was the driving force?
So, yes, I think there is that sort of slight reticence about it, isn't there, within the profession? But
Yeah.
that's changing. Dare I say it? We are slightly more mature now, And I think the again, it sounds a bit patronized, but the younger generation have grown up. We didn't grow up with social media. It's something that came, well, for me, it didn't, Facebook didn't exist when I was at university.
Really?
So yeah, that's how old I am. But I think
it started when I was. Yeah.
No, I was very sad that it wasn't, because my sister is also a vet and she's in a couple of years. She's a little bit younger than I am, and she had it when she was there. And I was just like, This is so cool.
Yeah.
That everyone can upload their pictures, every single picture. You take 100 pictures in a night and they all go on Facebook. And I was just like, this is so cool. But yeah.
Did you send random pokes to people for no reason and not know what it was?
Yeah. And not know when to stop poking. You're like,
I don't know what this is. Yeah.
Sorry?
I was like, I don't know what this is. I'm just hitting poke because somebody's poking me.
Exactly. I think poking only stopped when Facebook was like, right, guys, that's enough poking now. Right. But anyway, why did I do it? So basically, I'd been a vet for maybe like that typical period of time, 4 or 5 years. And you've kind of stopped running as fast as you possibly can to stay still. You start to think, oh, I'm getting this now. It's not a super... it's not just like a super mental stretch every day.
Right. The learning curve.
Yeah, exactly. And there were 2 things. One was I've always really been quite passionate about pet. Veterinary medicine is a partnership between the vet and the pet owner. We can't do our job. We're not the ones giving them the tablets. We need to work as a team to get the animals better. And so I started to get quite frustrated that at the time there wasn't a lot of great owner-facing information on the internet.
Right.
For me to be able to send them to some sort of resource to say, your cat's got chronic renal failure. This is a long-term thing. Here's a great website. Or your dog's got arthritis or whatever.
And about when was this? Was this pre-COVID?
Oh, James. This was in 2007.
Oh,
this
okay.
is how old I am. Okay. This is prehistoric, let me tell you. So I mean, it really was the Wild West. I don't know if you were around at the time, but there was this amazing website, which was about one of our most common pain relief. I'll not say the name, and it said this pain relief kills. And the website was like it was all in those wingding word pick art things, and it was like primary colors and flashing images.
Wingdings, okay. Yeah.
If you got onto Google, because I had prescribed that medication for your pet, that was literally the first thing that came up. This website that claimed it was going to kill your animal.
Okay.
So it was the Wild West. And so I am the sort of person which was like, well, if no one else is doing it, I'd better do it. I think that inherent bossiness is always helpful if you're on social media and you decide to put yourself out there, because that's the kind of personality type that it kind of attracts. Right. You assume that people want to hear your opinions.
Right.
So you put them out there. Anyway, so I wrote a website of veterinary advice.
Okay.
Because I was like, right, well, I need somewhere to send these people. And, this was pre-children. And like I say, that little tiny bit of extra brain space. And, you need to do something with it. So I did that. And then I started to blog on that website. And then I put Cat the Vet on Facebook. I was like, right, well, maybe I need a Facebook page to drive the traffic to this website. And the other thing that frustrated me a lot at the time was that there were very, very few positive voices about the veterinary profession in the online space, but also in the standard media space as well. Now, here in the UK now, we had back then, we had the British Veterinary Association, which is our sort of professional union body. They're not the Royal College who registers the profession. They're our sort of representative body.
Okay.
And I don't know who your equivalent would be in America. Maybe the AVMA or...
Yeah, probably, I would think.
Yeah. Anyway, and now they are fantastic at liaising with the media. So there's a story in the media about flat-faced dogs or vets giving vaccines or, imported pets or something like that. And the BVA will be ready with their press department to release a press statement for and on behalf of the vet profession, sort of explaining our position. But at the time, there was literally nothing like that.
Really?
And I found it quite frustrating because there would be articles. I mean, the same thing is just like repeated ad nauseum, bearing in mind how long ago this was. There would be articles. There was one article in the national press that was like, vets are over vaccinating pets and they're dying because of it. We asked the British Veterinary Association for comment and they said no comment. And I was like, that's horrendous.
That speaks louder than anything when they don't comment.
Yes.
Right.
And so that's really what spurred me on. So this is an exceptionally long-winded way of saying the reason I got into this is because I wanted to give the veterinary perspective to pet owners in a way that was really honest and open and positive and celebratory and supportive of the veterinary profession and what we do and why we do it.
Yeah.
That's your answer. You can edit out the whole lot of that and just say that sentence, I guess.
That's a great answer. And I like that. As you probably have gathered, my timeline for this starts with COVID. Because
right, okay.
I've got a brother who started doing Instagram and social and YouTube about 2018. He started really kind of hammering it, and he blew up and got like this giant. And he would always be on me about like, you've got to do this. Like this is just, there's too much opportunity here. And I didn't start it until about right when COVID hit is when I started kind of putting stuff out there. And my impetus was just, I was totally sick of just like you, even then up until like 2020, all I saw was just total BS that was just spread, like articles about flea and tick collars, just killing your dog. And I would read it and I would have so many questions that if I was the journalist, I'm like, why are you not like asking these questions and presenting a more agnostic sort of like article here rather than just jumping to all these conclusions based on what one person claims to have said or happened to their friend. And so I just got sick of the anecdotes. What was kind of the anecdotes being considered as evidence and then just people running in this echo chamber of what is inevitably anti-vet is what it all comes back to. It always comes back to, whether we're talking about AI diagnosing these diseases, whether we're talking about some, big pharma, quote unquote, killing my dog with food or with vaccines. It always comes back to, well, my vets didn't even pick up on this, and what are they doing? It always comes back. And that sort of frustration is what got me started. And then what got me thinking about it. And then what got me putting content out was watching French bulldogs die endlessly, no matter what we did, no matter what they told us in school or residency training about like how, I'm going on a tangent now, but how this disease, should have a good prognosis, but in this breed, it doesn't because of all these problems and how the French bulldog population just exploded. And that sort of got me motivated to say, okay, there needs to be some better information out here for people. And I think now it's definitely kind of realized, like, I think there's a lot of vets out there on the order of like human medical doctors where there's like a social media vet voice now that's kind of starting to become a real thing. But yeah, I mean, you were doing this for 15 years before I even thought about it.
Yeah, probably not a very good job if the messages were still out there. But that's the problem, isn't it? You're just one voice and you can only do so much. Right. And there is an avalanche of a tsunami of bad information and bad actors and people who think they know what they're talking about, but really have absolutely no idea. And it's so easy for them to attack the vet profession as a way of making themselves look better and as a way of sowing distrust in our message so people will listen to them as well. It's always been a problem, and it's kind of worse than ever now, I think. But there is, like you say, a very strong, positive veterinary voice now, and there's lots of vets online and lots of vets with Instagram pages and TikTok feeds and whatnot, all in the main singing from the same hymn sheet. And this is one thing that I sometimes am like, you say that like vets don't know what they're talking about, and we're all in the pocket of big kibble and big pharma and big whatever, and yes. We have no knowledge about XYZ.
Big kibble.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Have you not heard that?
I heard that. Yeah.
Oh, and you just like, has it ever occurred to you that when an entire profession of highly educated, science-based people who have animal welfare at the heart of everything they do generally all agree with each other that there might be something in that messaging that could be correct? Right. And, and you just think, but so much of the alternative messaging or that sort of we all know what we're talking about, that sort of vein of information, relies so heavily on undermining the vet profession, because that is the only way that they can get people to believe them, because they have to get them to disbelieve and distrust us.
Right.
And that really drives me insane. And that's, and you can tackle that, absolutely, but it is really hard. And it opens you up to an enormous amount of criticism, because you put your head above the parapet and say, I don't agree with that. And I, as a professional, will tell you something very different. And you just get attacked. You get attacked because of that. So, it's far easier to not tackle those things head on. So that's not every vet in the social media space does. And I think that that's completely okay and totally understandable, because you can make your life very, well, you don't make your life difficult, but you end up with other people doing their damnedest to make your life difficult.
A lot of people see it as all risk and no gain. And I totally see that viewpoint a lot of the time.
Hugely. Yeah.
Have you been like doxed or harassed, and like, has it gotten to where like it's kind of hit home?
Yes. Yeah. Really? I've only been doxed, as in people have found out where I have worked and then rung and emailed work to tell work how dreadful a person I am once. And that happened a couple of years ago. And there was obviously a forum where I'd said it was a big story in the UK at the time, but it's really passed now. It was about an alpaca. Can you believe it?
Okay. It's always the things that you would never expect. Like,
it's amazing. It's amazing what upsets people on the internet. I honestly, just when I think that I've done it all and I'm like, this post is definitely going to be completely benign, something will offend people, perennially offended. And it was basically animal rights activists, and they were busy sending death threats to all sorts of the RCVS and our government in the UK over this particular situation. And I sort of popped my head above the parapet and said, you know what, I don't think sending that kind of threats to my colleagues is a good idea. Actually, I wouldn't do that if I were you. I don't think that's quite the right way to behave. Anyway, that kicked off a good week of stuff. But and obviously they did some digging. They found out where I worked. It was shared in some forum or Facebook group somewhere. And you can always tell when that happens, because every message you get is almost the same wording. Yeah. Someone has written on a forum, I found out, and I think this. And literally you will get messages and posts and comments with almost the same, paragraph of stuff. And you're like, right, well, this is just literally copied and pasted, isn't it? Right. You haven't even managed to insult me on an original level. Right. But they found where I work, and worked received about 40 or 50 emails, lots of phone calls over the course of a couple of days, from all over the country, telling them that they better sack me or the business would be destroyed. And that was, not to minimize it, it was horrendous,
Yeah.
absolutely awful, because it's just so stressful when that kind of thing happens. And it's hard because it's so undeserved. It makes you really angry because you're like, how dare you think that this is an appropriate way to behave
Right.
towards anybody, even someone you disagree with. This is completely and utterly outrageous behavior.
Yep.
But then you feel guilty because your work colleagues who have absolutely nothing to do with the situation are having to deal with the problem that you have effectively caused.
Yeah.
Then you feel worried because you're like, well, what if my boss does listen to these people and does sack me or does think I'm a terrible person?
Right.
And then you think, this is ridiculous. How dare these people make me feel like this? And it's just this like vicious cycle of stress. And it's, some people will say, well, I don't understand why people get upset about things that are said online. It's not real. Just turn the computer off and walk away. But even when it doesn't spill over into real life, it's still very, very real. And you can't turn the computer off and walk away. There's something addictive about reading that negativity about you. And
like staring into the void. It really is just like it grabs you in some way. Yeah.
Absolutely awful. Because I think you've experienced it as well, haven't you?
Oh yeah. About a year ago, I had a breeder take a comment of mine completely out of context, immediately blocked me, so I couldn't dig up the entirety of my response, so that the first comment looked really bad. Which, by the way, the comment they used is something that a bunch of vets say behind the scenes, and I always say stop saying that, like when it's on its own. And that propagated to people stitching it and duetting it nonstop and like making fun of me and making all these like, they took other videos I had and would just be like this and like laughing at me but not saying anything. And I'm fine with all that. Like I truly am just like, but you guys are the ones making yourself look bad here and not me. But the worry I get, when I get worried is when people like what happened to you call your work and they start harassing your boss. And all it takes is for your boss to be like, look, this is just more trouble than it's worth. You're out of here. Like, if your boss gets scared and they're like, we can't do this anymore. Like whether you're right or wrong here, that like your career and your livelihood's in the hands of somebody that might just wake up and decide, this is not worth it. Right.
Yeah.
So
and the bullies win. That's what makes me so mad. These people are bullies.
Now, I was very lucky. My boss came into my office and she was like, okay, we need to talk about something. And I had been kind of seeing this going on for like a few days. And I was wondering if it was going to like, actually manifest. And then she was like, apparently like people are calling me like demanding your resignation and like leaving voicemails. And I said, okay. So I showed her everything. I'm like, but here, watch my videos. We sat down in my office, watch my videos here, see all the comments. And she was like, oh, I actually like agree with what you're saying, online. Cause she's a vet too. And I was like, okay, like this is what happened. This is like, I explained that somebody literally is trying to just like manipulate the narrative here. And she was like, okay. And we had people from like what happened to you. We had people that had never been there, never met me, didn't even live where I live in a different state over 1,000 miles away, calling to demand that I be fired and how bad of a person I am. And I'm like, what? Like, who would do something like that? Like, could anything ever happen to you that you would read about online? It shouldn't say even happen to you, that you would read online that would make you do that and call their place of employment if you've never been there and never interacted with that before.
Particularly towards an individual. You can definitely agree with and, send like, emails of complaint and stuff to companies and things. I think we've all done that when we've felt strongly about something. But to actually attack an individual for expressing a professional opinion,
right?
Generally in a very polite and professional way, it's very, very rare I see vets online behave in anything other than a very professional way. And that doesn't mean you can't be passionate or definite about your views.
Right.
But I've never seen a vet stoop to personal insults or anything like that, and it doesn't come close. When they go low, we have to go high. I think this is one thing that's really important, is if you are going to be a vet, present yourself as a vet, as a professional online. What you're effectively doing is setting yourself up as an ambassador for the profession and for all of your colleagues. So it really is important. We don't stoop to their level, and we have to take the higher ground, but it is still outrageous. And until you've experienced it, I don't think you really understand what it's like. And like you, my boss was really supportive and was just like, these people are clearly completely crazy. What you've said is completely reasonable.
Right.
And actually very, and what I had said was like totally in line with what the government was saying, what the science was, everything.
Right.
But, when it comes to animal rights, there are some people who are, sense and common sense and reason don't come into it.
Yeah.
And, that was the one and only time. There's been lots of times when I've said, expressed my opinion about raw feeding or flat-faced dogs or, some things like that. Always with an evidence base, always.
Yeah.
Because I think if I ever say anything online and express a professional opinion, anything that I say is always backed up by some sort of evidence. That's how I form my opinions.
Yeah.
Obviously a certain degree of professional experience and anecdote does back them up, but especially if I'm going to say anything in public, I've generally got a couple of papers and some key opinion leaders on my side anyway.
Yeah.
I'd forgotten where I was going with that, but anyway, it's just really important. But that's the only time it's ever, no, that's right, it's the only time it's ever spilled over into real life.
Yeah. But it's scary. Like I'll be like, I'm pretty good with this stuff. Like most of it doesn't bother me, but when your boss comes into your office and it turns into like a real thing, that is a scary moment. Even if I was like single with no kids, I wouldn't be that scared about it. But when you've got like a family to support and you come home to 2 babies and it's like, this could all just go poof because somebody decides it.
Yeah. Simply because you expressed an opinion and in a professional capacity on the internet that somebody disagreed with.
Yeah.
Someone who isn't even close to your level of knowledge or expertise in the nicest possible way disagreed with. And because of that, they think that somehow that's justification for attempting to destroy your livelihood. It's so far beyond the pale. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
However, it hasn't stopped us. And that's what I think is the most important thing. Is it's very, very, you get these little blowing up of stressful events that aren't not particularly pleasant.
Right.
But at the end of the day, I don't know about you, I'm quite bloody minded. And although I don't like it, and although it does affect me, and although it makes my life quite unpleasant for a few days because I do find it very stressful, because I have never set out on the internet to upset anybody. That's never been my intention.
Right.
Even though sometimes you think I'm going to have to say this, but I know it's going to upset people. That's not the primary reason why I would ever make a statement.
Right.
You can't let them win, because what they want to do is silence you.
Right.
And stop you saying what you're saying, because probably generally you're right. And they disagree with you. So it hasn't stopped me, because we don't let bullies win. And I don't know about you, but that's once I've been through a bit of an emotional turmoil, I come out the other side more determined. Yeah.
No, I took a break for a while, for sure, and just was like, whatever, get through the holidays. I don't care about this stuff anymore. And but then I came back to it for the same reason. I was like, I'm not going to stop making content just because somebody on a futon made fun of me on a stitch. Like, come on.
Yeah, it's all. And whenever I have these conversations about social media, I think the conversation inevitably turns towards the negative, because I mean, that's why our brains are wired, isn't it? To concentrate on that.
Right.
But I think it's actually just the most amazingly positive space, that there's so much more good and so much more positivity comes your way from followers and colleagues than negativity. But of course, just the way that we think means
I know I'm doing the right thing, because I end up having other vets that are either like big social media vet accounts or just colleagues in general see it, and they're like, I love your videos, I love what you're saying, I love this stuff.
Yeah.
And the text too. That's in the vet text together. If that's still happening, I'm getting that feedback, then I'm doing the right thing. It's the moment where your own colleagues are like, what are you doing? If that ever happens, then it's like you might want to back off and kind of reevaluate stuff.
Yeah, I think
That's
so.
my gauge.
Yeah. One of my gauges is my husband, because he's a vet as well.
My wife is a vet.
Yeah. You know, it's just the thing, isn't it? You're so busy you don't get to meet anybody else.
Pretty much.
And certainly when I was sort of first doing it, I've always been very passionate about this. And I think that, particularly from an animal welfare perspective and point of view, there are some things which, the vet, I feel like I need to speak out on, and I've created a platform where I'm fortunate enough to be able to do that. Yeah. And every so often I do run something by him because he's the level head, and I'm like, this is passionate but professional and polite. Right. What do you think? Right. And he's very good now at being a sounding board and just being like, yeah, that's cool. I would, but and again, that kind of shores you up from a professional point of view as well. Like if there's any vets listening, if anything did really, really go wrong and you ended up facing some sort of official complaint, if you could say, I discussed this with colleagues and they sort of said that they felt that this message was okay, it does give you some degree of like plausibility to what you chose to do. But it would be I think that's always the big spectre, isn't it? That's the worst thing, isn't it? That for a professional complaint. But I think you'd have to do something really, really, really beyond the pale to realistically be at risk of that.
Right. Because I don't even know, is there actual language in, like, for us state veterinary licensing boards and things like that says, like, if you say something a certain way on social media, I guess it's probably just like maintaining a professional like aura, probably stuff like that you might be subject to. But I
think for us over here, we have the Guide to Professional Conduct that's written by the Royal College of Veterinary Surgeons, and that is, well, it hasn't for a long time been focused on the online world. There's more stuff in it now as things are changing and more vets are, on social media, but it also encompasses things like practice Facebook pages and, every aspect. So there are some guides to follow, but essentially they're just, professional behavior is what is expected.
Yeah.
And as, my personal rule is I wouldn't say anything online that I wouldn't, say to a room full of clients.
Right.
And I think I think if that's my sort of personal bar.
Yeah. My struggle is that I'm kind of a blunt force instrument with like how I talk. That's just the way I am. So how I would talk in front of people is pretty blunt. So I have to kind of like, what I've worked on for like the last year or so is just kind of making it a little more like, just like not quite just right at you sort of thing. Just a little bit like softer around the edges. That's kind of my struggle.
But don't dull the passion, because that is what creates the interest. Around what we say. And certainly the people who are, let's not say on the other side, but who have alternative viewpoints have absolutely no problem with kicking off on the internet. But they're not bound by the same professional rules we are. And I think that it's good that we are, because if it ultimately, the vast majority of people online, even though they, might get taken in by passion, are sensible enough to appreciate messages that come from educated professionals like ourselves or doctors. And, there is that silent majority who are listening and taking it in and forming an opinion that hopefully means that they'll be able to care for their pets, with a science and evidence basis to what they do, because that's what we are advising.
Yeah. Do you, with social media, what level of like financial gain is there? You don't have to speak personally to it, but is there, if you can just like, for the listeners and watchers, like, is there actual like financial benefit to doing all this social media work? Like, what is there a payout for all the work numerically?
Have you been speaking to my husband? Because he's been asking me this for a long time. You spend all your time on that computer.
No, I have not.
Yeah. Well, there is now for me, but I have literally been doing it a long time. But like you say, I've been sort of ticking along quite quietly, doing my thing, and I have gained a really wonderful following and like you say, follower numbers. But there are lots of people who've been doing it a lot shorter, who have just had a much more stratospheric ride. But yes, there is some financial gain to be, not from like flat out content creation is not going to make you money unless you have millions of followers. I think that's very, very hard. I mean, you're on YouTube, and I don't know what your revenue is, but I have a very small YouTube channel that's never made any money and that sort of thing. But obviously
I had to work so hard to get it monetized. And that's even with my brother giving me like a windfall, or not a tailwind, I guess you would call it. Because you have to get 4,000 watch hours and 1,000 subscribers within a year, just out of the blue. And I mean, it's almost impossible. But right now, my YouTube makes about $200 a month, which is it's a nice starting place, right? But I don't really get that many views either. And my TikTok, I have more followers on TikTok than anything else, and I only make like, for 2.5 years, I've made like $1,100 off of TikTok, and that was mostly from one video that just exploded one time, completely out of the blue, and got like 30 million views or something like that.
Wow.
Yeah, I just completely went out, and I was
and you're like, yes, this is it.
I was like, this is it. I made it. Like, I had people asking to like, copyright my video and like turn the rights over and stuff like that.
Yeah, you're going to end up in the Daily Mail.
Yeah, I know. It was a stray cat, and so I was like, there's no owner logistics here. It's just like whatever. But
you have to split that revenue.
Right. No, but I mean, I never saw a dime from whatever that was that I signed. but like, yeah, you have to have. I think you have to have over 1 million total subscribers across like TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, because those are like the monetizing ones. Unless I don't know how blogs work or Facebook, to be honest with you, but you have to have over 1 million before you start to see anything. And even then, it's more just like endorsements that you're getting, like the Figs endorsement, the ambassadorships and stuff like that.
Yes, that's where the partnerships is where you can potentially make it income generating. And that is certainly some of what I do now. But I'm very, very fussy about who I will work with and what I would say. And again, I think it just, for me personally, it all just comes down to that professional it's all just about your integrity, isn't it? And you can gain and lose that. Well, it takes a long time to gain, and I think it probably would be quite easy to lose if you weren't very careful.
So
I'm very careful about who I will work with and who I will partner with. But certainly, yes, that is another, if you're going to work at this and do this, I think it's completely reasonable for people to want to see some sort of return on their time investment. And to want to work with companies. Everybody wants to be an influencer these days. My children, my 6-year-old the other day was like, YouTuber when I grew up.
Oh, this is all. There was no cable TV anymore or anything like that.
Oh no. YouTube,
from what I can
tell. There's some YouTubers who I'm definitely paying their mortgage for them. The amount of merch and views and stuff that goes through my house with my kids, for sure. So I would say, for any vet who's maybe thinking about it and starting a social media account, or thinking, I would say, go for it. The more positive voices we have in the space about our profession and what we do, the better. The better for the profession and the better for the animals that we care for, because like I say, it's extraordinary how we all speak with a very, very similar point of view and voice, and there are some people in the world who maybe should stop and think about that, but it's amazing. Like from all over the world, I've got there's people that I've met online in Australia and America and Canada and South America and all over Europe, and the similarity of how we approach what we do is brilliant. There is genuinely a global community here.
That's the part that is crazy to me, because I've gotten so many DMs about vets in Nigeria and I want to say India and maybe Iran, those 3 countries. asking to come over and like, how can I work for you? How can I be a tech for you for a little bit? And can I work at your hospital? And then like, can I get my veterinary license? I want to work in the US. I get these messages all the time. And they're like, I love your videos. Like, I love what you do. I love how, you're a neurologist. I want to be a neurologist. And it's striking how many vets across the world are like, you can just connect with. I'm talking to a vet in Nigeria right now. Like,
yeah.
And we're just it's so insane. That's one of the positives for sure of social media. So yeah, I would say that unless you're on the order of like Hunter Finn level popularity, you're probably not going to be like quitting your job to do social media. And even he's not quitting his job. He's starting his
own opened a clinic, hasn't he?
Yeah, going down that route. And I've noticed that his social media posts have gone down to a real simple little, just like staring forward and putting a different caption on it as he started his practice. So I definitely think that the busyness there is
real life gets in the way.
Right. Like it's yeah. So I think there is some money to be made, but I think it takes a ton of work, and you're not going to be quitting vet. Like you're going to be doing
it. And also I don't think you should. I mean,
right. That too.
I mean, I guess I might at some point, but I think again, if you're going to
work until you pass
yourself, sorry,
you're not going to just work until the end. You're going to retire at some point.
Well, it would be nice. But I think if you're going to present yourself as a vet in the online space, you probably should really be a vet in some capacity.
I totally agree.
Because I think that it just adds that level of integrity to the messaging and keeps you plugged into the issues that we as a profession and pet owners and animal caregivers are facing. But yeah, there is that. Social media is the beast that needs to be fed.
Yeah.
And I think that's the other thing when people talk to me about, well, can I do it? And I'm like, yeah, of course you can. Absolutely. But be aware of how addictive and relentless it can be. And you just think, oh gosh, I haven't posted for a few days. I should post something. What can I post about?
Yeah.
And I still do it now. And then, I'll have a flurry of some good ideas, or some issues will come up, and I'll make some, express my opinions on them. And then there'll be like a week where I'm like, oh, I don't know what to say.
Right.
And actually it's fine if you don't say anything.
Right. That is a fine line, because I find myself constantly trying to like brainstorm content for videos and researching and trying to hone what I would consider like a hobby and a skill that I'm trying to get better at. It's kind of how I view it. And I wonder, I'm like, should I just put this energy towards my kids? Like I'm using energy here. Like, why don't I just like spend? But I come back to the fact that like, maybe one day this will be something that can kind of, help them in some way, financially or otherwise. And also I like to kind of like, leave like a log of my work. It's kind of like, this is what I put energy into, and this will always be there so long as the internet exists. And you can kind of like leave your little mark. I like the thought of that.
Absolutely. And it's fun. And
it is fun. Like making content is like very fun thing to do using the knowledge that we have.
Yeah, exactly. And we get to use our skills in a different way. And like you say, expand new skills, and keep the passion for what we do for us personally, or this is how I feel, kind of alive.
Yep.
And once you've got into the mindset of content creation, like you're like, everything can be content. I was at a conference last week, and I was like, this is really interesting. But then that's what's so important. There needs to be somebody, and it doesn't necessarily have to be me, I just happen to be doing it, but lots of other people could do it as well, of taking those, you're sat in a lecture. I was sat in a lecture about behavior and dementia in dogs, and learning all about the science behind cognitive decline, and thinking, this is really interesting, and this is how I could take this and present it to pet owners,
right,
to help them understand their older pets. Like, this is genuinely a passion project.
Yes.
And if it isn't, you probably won't keep going with it, because like you say, like life will get in the way and something else will come along, and it will be something that you do for a bit, but maybe not forever. And that's cool as well.
Right.
But I'm in too deep now.
I know. I feel like I'm all in. I hired an editor about a month ago from Dr. Crocker, who I think you follow.
Oh yeah.
Tanette, is that's how you pronounce her name? I'm pretty sure.
I was hoping that you might say it, because I think it's Tanette Crocker. I'll just butcher it, but she's lovely.
Great. She's great. She's one. It's you and her are the first two people I kind of like connected with when I started doing all this stuff. I think she's the American version of you. If I had to, you guys are like mirror images. I think you guys are like the UK. I mean, it's like both of you guys. But no, she's great, and she got me in touch with like an editor who I just hired, and I'm trying to treat this more seriously now. But I don't know why I mentioned that. I'm getting off topic too.
Well, I don't know. I don't have an editor. Maybe I need an editor. Is that?
Well, I'm doing YouTube. So like YouTube requires like a long form talking head that I need to like pop, and I need the images to move and like keep your attention a little bit. So I just got to a point where I kind of figured it out, and I had some success, and I built my channel. But at this point, I need to delegate that work to somebody else. Like it doesn't.
It takes sense. Hours. I think that's the other thing that people.
Oh my God!
It takes so long to edit, to refine, even if it's just text and images. It can take such a long time.
Yeah, and I've seen vets with huge Instagram and TikTok and whatever accounts. Like I get the sense that they're kind of dabbling in the YouTube waters, and I'm like, I can tell that they're just like, yeah, I'm going to try this out, but I don't know if this is going to be like, because it takes so much work. It's much work, but it does monetize the best from what there's a direct, like, if you can get the airplane off the ground, like it is the best monetization rate from what I can tell. But I may be.
I don't have time for more in my life. My children keep telling me I need to be on it, and my son is obsessed with YouTube Shorts and watches nothing else. And he's like, you need to do those. And I was like, okay, fine.
Yeah.
I'll put it on my to-do list.
Well, now you are on YouTube, so we can start doing like a couple times a year collaboration videos and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Wanted to ask you about this article that came out and this whole issue, because this is a foreign subject to me, no pun intended. But the fact that apparently there's like a price review committee in the UK, like the government is reviewing vet prices to see if they are too much. This came out a couple of weeks ago, and I saw you posted about it on various social media accounts. So can you summarize like what is going on and like what the end result of the government reviewing veterinary prices is?
I'm not a huge expert about it. My approach to this, You're
not an economist too?
No, sadly not, and not a financial expert in any shape or form.
We're vets, so we're not financial experts. Don't take that advice from us.
Yeah, which is why monetization is something which probably is passing me by, and I should be paying more attention. Anyway, I came at this story from the point of view which is it kicked off just the completely typical negativity about vets and fees and charging, and it's too much, and vets don't care about pets, they only care about money and all that jazz.
Because like we said, it always comes back to the vets are evil, no matter what.
Precisely. Yeah. And so from what I understand, so we have the Competition Commission and Marketing Authority, whatever it is, in the UK, which looks at prices and that companies are charging, and particularly because we're having quite a significant proportion now of the vet profession is corporatized. So, vet clinics are owned by larger parent companies, whether there is some degree of price driving the prices up because of a lack, because it's such a big company, they're able to do that and not, they're not being driven down by competition. Do you see what I mean?
Yep.
And certainly prices are rising. That's completely true. But
it sounds like a monopoly sort of concern.
Well, I think essentially that's what they're worried about, that there is some sort of monopolization going on.
Okay.
And so they've set up an investigation, or it's kind of like a big word, like they're looking into it.
Right.
Whether I don't think they're doing that from a particularly aggressive standpoint. I think they're just looking at it. And so there is now, you can go onto the government website, log into this particular page, and it asks you, because I've done it, it asks you, who you are, what your relationship to the vet profession is, and what your experiences of the pricing are, and what you think. And then from my understanding, that survey questionnaires is going to be open for a while, and then they're going to collate all that information, look at the fees that are being charged, and decide whether there is, an overcharging happening or not. And I would really welcome that. And I've encouraged I've said to people, go and do it. Even if you're going to say absolutely awful things and claim that we are overcharging, go and tell the government, because let's just drag this all out into the open.
Yeah.
And let's decide.
Right.
And I hope or think that what they'll come down on is they'll just go, medical care is costly, and there are different options for different treatments. There are different, you can always go to a different clinic, but some of the stuff, I mean, obviously, as we've now established, I've been a vet for a while, and the level of care and attention and equipment and skill and the things that we did back then is just a different world.
Oh my God.
And that's a good thing. But unfortunately, it has come with some price increases because of the level of care we're able to give. And I don't think any professional, certainly, and no pet owner, once they are aware of the differences, would want to go back to how we used to do it.
Right.
I do not want to try to remove a molar with a hacksaw ever again.
Yep.
I have a drill and I'm going to use it.
Yep. I remember back when, so I started working in a kennel in 1999. I was like a kennel cleaner at our local general practice in rural Georgia. Have you been to the States before? You're familiar with the States?
No, no, but my sister lives in Atlanta, which I haven't.
That's where I'm from.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I'm from like an hour north of Atlanta in a little town called Kennesaw. It's a Civil War battlefield where they built a town on it.
They've only recently moved there. I don't really.
Real progressive town back in the 90s, let me tell you.
Yeah. We've not visited yet. She used to live in Los Angeles, so I'm vaguely aware of America.
Okay.
And she's married an American. But I don't know. Very well.
So back in the 90s in my town, it was probably like most of the world, which was veterinary care, was like, well, Fluffy's 7.5 years old, is getting up there. This lameness isn't getting any better. I think we just got to let him go. Like that sort of thing, And those are like, nobody is going to stand for that these days. Like that is not a level of care that I would say the vast majority of pet owners are down with or want or expect from you. So as the level of care, like you said, is completely just like going up the S curve to catch up with like what human medicine would be, basically, is what we're trying to catch. There's like the cost of doing that is going to do the same thing. Like it's going to go up. And so you have to just decide, like, do you want the care to be better at a higher cost, or do you want the care to stay where it's at and just be super cheap, but we don't actually help anything as much as we do now, right? But that kind of touches on a thing where it's like the like veterinary care. And so I graduated vet school in 2009. So I'm old enough to know what things were like before. I mean, really the last like 10 years, I mean, things have just changed totally, not even COVID related, but just like completely turned around. But things are just so entirely different now. Like the way, I mean, I do surgeries on 18-year-old dogs sometimes to take out disc herniations, and they do fine. They come back in 19 year or a year later at the age of 19 for something else, and it's like that would have never happened back in the early 2000s sort of era. So I forgot where I was going with that as well. But okay, so basically the UK is looking into whether or not vets charge too much. And then the effect of that is people get to comment on the news article websites bashing their vet about how they're being price gouged.
And the problem is that the vast majority of vets, whether they work for an independent or a corporate, have absolutely nothing to do with the prices. There's very few of us that I just work in my clinic. I'm not part of the management. I don't own the business. I just am an employee. So I have absolutely no authority over how much is charged.
Right.
And that is the same for the vast majority of vets. So, and I appreciate that a lot of the frustration from pet owners comes from the fact that it is it's the way I say it is it's costly. It is not cheap. I don't think if you say expensive, it kind of implies that there's a certain degree of luxury or overcharging happening. Whereas I think if you say costly, you're acknowledging the fact that this isn't a really, really cheap undertaking.
Yeah.
But I feel the word sort of is less implying that there's a a price gouging or a price inflation.
Yeah, like there's costs on both sides versus.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Anyway, I can appreciate why people get frustrated because, in comparison to your average disposable income, veterinary medicine and veterinary care will take up quite a sizable proportion of that if your pet gets sick or even needs something fairly routine, like some dental work or something like that.
Right.
I think you guys in America are much, much better at that routine work than we are over here, like the cohats and the annual blood work and the stuff that seems, from looking in, totally routine, whereas us over here, we don't really have any of that.
Really?
we yeah, and I'd love that, but that's an extra sell to the general public.
Right.
I completely appreciate where people are coming from when it, and if the cost is the barrier that stands in the way for your pet getting this level of care, I do see how frustrating it is, but the frustration is directed at the wrong people. And that's why I'm so keen for people to fill in this survey, because if there is an issue and the government does decide, then the people who are in charge of the prices will have to be the ones that will deal with it,
right.
Rather than us on the ground.
Right. I think people should know that a lot of I don't know how it is in the UK, but a lot of vets, at least in the US, get paid a percentage of what they're doing. They get like production bonuses and things like that, which you can debate whether that's right or wrong or disincentivized or not, separate issue. But the prices at which that they charge stuff and then draw their incomes from, not set by the vet. That's set by whoever owns the company. Okay. And then the other thing I wanted to add too was that every clinic I have ever worked in, if you are a doctor who starts to get a little loose with like doing too many things and being like, I don't know if that's necessary, and you're just running up bills for no reason, to a vet, every person will catch on to that, and that will be acted upon to stop doing it. Like the second it starts if people start to see that, I feel like vets are really good at self-regulating, because we all know, like, why are you doing this? Like, have you seen like some, not very useful tests being run? And I have not seen that ever in my career, but vets are the type of people who will themselves be like, look, we got to have a meeting and you got to stop doing this. Like, it's not going to be a thing that just goes on and proliferates in vet.
It's very, very rare.
Yeah.
Very rare that vets will overtreat or overcharge. I don't think I've ever personally experienced working in a practice where someone is doing something to an animal that I think is ethically dubious, because I think it's a cost. We're just charging for the sake of it. I don't think I've ever seen it. And I think vets are incredibly conscious of money.
Yeah.
And actually it's, it forms just such a huge part of the conversation we have every day.
Right.
And, that's the other message that I try to get out there is, if you are struggling or feeling the pinch or worrying about money, you must come and talk to us, because there are lots of ways that we can solve the problem.
Yeah.
And it might not be perfect. Your Frenchie may have done its disc in, and I would love to send it to Dr. Cellini, but his fees are going to be higher. Is there another way that we can try and, maybe not a Frenchie with a disc, but
you're picking the wrong scenario.
Yeah, I am totally picking the wrong scenario, aren't I? But there are
but I get your point.
But also, when it comes to that point, that frustrates me as well. It's like, that is an almost written in the stars problem. If you buy a dog, and I think sometimes we need to be a bit firmer about this, you've bought what is effectively a disabled animal. Yes. Because of the way that it's been bred, and certain health problems are almost inevitable. Yes. And those health problems are really expensive to fix. So again, I appreciate how it's difficult if it's unaffordable for you, but it is not a problem that was completely out of the blue. And then to turn it around and blame the vet, you just start to think, I'm running out. I try really hard to be reasonable and sympathetic, but there are sometimes when I will just run out of sympathy.
Yeah.
So like, this could have been predicted.
Right. No, and it's not like there's a shortage of information out there. Like, if you Google French Bulldog or YouTube French Bulldog health problems, things will come up. Like that's all you have to do is Google search.
That's all you have to do. And Google now, back in the day when I was desperately trying as a one-woman show to save the world,
on MySpace,
nothing was there. but now it's amazing. I don't need
Yeah.
to anymore. I've not written an
Yeah.
article of veterinary and just general advice to stick on my website for years because I don't need to.
Yeah. And I would argue that it's actually, as far as like, whether or not vets are just like doing unnecessary tests and things like, it's more likely that I'm not blaming anybody, but it's more likely that a client would make you do futile care on a dog and not declare that we're stopping, than a vet will do unnecessary tests that don't give you anything.
Yeah.
Because I think we've all, as vets, run into the situation where we are just kind of like, basically turning into a hospice nurse for a lot of patients and doing things that we know are not going to help, but you can't make a pet owner make a decision. You just give them the information and they tell you what to do a lot of the time.
Yeah. I mean, is that again, I think that again is a very unusual scenario in my experience, that owners keep going too long. I think the vast majority of people are very sensible and level-headed. I'll have on one or two occasions put my foot down and said no.
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day,
with you. I agree with you. I just think that is more likely than it is I've seen vets completely overcharging and doing.
Yes, things. I think it probably is that pet owners keep going too long. But again, sometimes that is without veterinary input, isn't it? And you get an animal and you just think, golly, I really wish you'd brought this to me 6 months ago, because do you know what? You could have had several months of great quality of life with my help there, and then a wonderful death. Whereas now what we've had is a lot of very poor welfare because, you've been afraid or reluctant or in denial about coming to me.
Yeah. All right. So I wanted to ask you about this too, because this is making headlines recently, again, in the UK. And apparently have they officially banned, or are they just talking about banning American XL bully dogs over there due to, like, are these dogs actually like killing a lot of people? Like, is that a...
Yeah, they are. They're vastly overrepresented, unfortunately, in the attack and death statistics in the past few years. And they're kind of a new phenomenon. Well, newish. We've had them around for a few years. So no, they haven't officially banned them yet. But our Prime Minister announced a couple of weeks ago that he was going to ban them. There's been a lot of chatter about it for a while in our press, because we have had several very high profile fatalities from this breed.
Wow.
And if you look back in the statistics of, their main statistic is death, because of course that's what is,
sure.
Yeah, 6 of the 10 fatal dog attacks in the last year were linked to one breed.
Wow.
And at least 3 of the 7 this year. And when you consider the proportion in comparison to how many dogs there are in the country that are XL bullies versus how many of them are causing really serious problems, they're hugely overrepresented. Now, it is a very complex and nuanced and many layers of an issue that we could talk for at least another hour, if not more, about.
Well, I'm going to just caption one thing and make it for my own, and then I'm just going to put it out there and just try to... No, but go ahead. I'll let you expand on that.
Oh, well, I mean, so all that's going to happen. So no, they haven't announced it. Yes, there's a lot of chatter. They did it 30 years ago with some other breeds in the UK. And depending on who you talk to, that's been a terrible disaster or a very successful piece of legislation.
Right.
It's the reason that muzzles of demand is going up is because it's likely that any dog deemed an XL bully, which is a whole other debate in itself, will need to be muzzled in public.
Right.
So that's and then if it's not muzzled in public, I think that will probably give our law enforcement more powers to act to seize the dog prior to it doing something really awful.
Right.
I think that's where it's going to go. Nobody at the moment really knows. Everyone's just in a great big flap about it, and there's lots of very strong opinions. But until we actually see the legislation, which I think is going to be very difficult to write, we don't actually know.
Yeah, this issue at a whole, as far as like banning dangerous dogs, it really is hard for me to pick a side on it, because, like you said, there's tons of nuance. I think one of the big things that will affect your decision making is whether or not you're a parent. And being a parent, I put my little baby girls in these sorts of like situations in my head, like all the time. Like, and it's hard not to just emotionally just be like, nope, yeah, I get rid of all of them, you know. So you have to constantly like fight that and try to find the logic and the nuance. And I think a lot of people who are, you know, who aren't vets probably just are like, you know what, I'm prioritizing my kids no matter what. I can't argue with them about that. Like, I'm not going to argue with anybody who's like, yeah, I'm doing anything I can and supporting any legislation that protects my children.
Absolutely. And there is
Yeah.
one lady here in the UK who lost her son to a dog attack, who
Oh,
has been the most extraordinary voice in the debate
that's so
and
sad.
has been a real sort of driver of the discussion about this legislation.
Right.
You know, in memory of her son. And I've heard her speak a few times, and it is, I think you wouldn't, as a parent, it's even worse, but I think even as a not a parent, to hear her speak and learn her story is quite extraordinary. But what we've got now in the UK is public attention and passion to deal with a problem to do with dogs. And what I really hope is, you know, even if we get some legislation banning a breed, fair enough, there's so much more that can be done around poor breeding practices, poor training, poor dog ownership. You know, like you say, it's a many-layered problem. And I just would love to see the government think, right, this is a vote winner, let's run with it and finally nail down some legislation with teeth around the whole dog breeding and owning subject.
Right.
I don't know about you guys, but we have a big problem with, you know, poor breeding and puppy farms. I think for you it's even worse though.
Yeah.
You know, where dogs are coming from.
It's horrible. It's not the entire problem, as I've stated in like other things on my social medias, but it is a huge problem. It's, you know, people, any name your breed, you know, French bulldog, but people don't know where their dog's coming from. They think they do, but if you dig online, you can go into some pretty weird rabbit holes about like the people and organizations that are involved in like getting, you know, these puppies and sires and things like that. It's like I don't think anybody really knows what they're signing up for when they buy some of these breeds. They think they do, but I just, and I'm not saying I do, but I just think that you're just buying a huge mystery box of like health problems or like disposition a lot of the time. And like, but like, how do you, and I got flack for this for saying this on TikTok, like, how does somebody even research this? Like there's no, like, what can you do besides go on, I don't know, the breed club organizations, but even then it's like, where are they getting their puppies from, you know? And I don't know, that gets into a whole separate discussion about just people signing up for all sorts of problems.
Yeah, I feel like it's worse for you because you're such a big country and
Yeah.
dogs can travel such a long way for you. You know, people fly them, don't they, to
Right.
new owners and stuff.
Yes.
With, you know, us, we're fairly small, so you know you could drive 3 hours to a breeder,
Yeah.
and you would have covered half the length of the country. So
Right. Right.
you know,
Yeah.
you'd get the other end of it.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit more, you know, people can visit, because I'm always so keen for them to visit the breeder and meet the mum and
Sure.
you know,
Sure.
see where the puppy's been bred. And I think over here that is a more realistic prospect. There's still a massive amount of issues around buying a dog, but I think here it's a more realistic prospect. Whereas for you guys, you know, you could literally buy something 3 states over, couldn't you? And
3, you could get things shipped from California out to here. And I mean, it's like a multi-thousand-mile journey and you're just doing everything online. And it's like, we actually, in this area of the country, we just had a news report of a one of those like remote training scams where somebody will claim to be a dog trainer, take your dog for 3 weeks. And it was kind of like a higher profile. It was a professional gambler, believe it or not, but he had his dog trained, a Frenchie, and then he found his dog had been starved to death in a cage because they just took his money and then put the dog in a cage, and they found it, and that was that. But the Connecticut authorities are trying to like they're investigating this, and they're finding this like big ring of people who are just scamming people and taking their dog, and that's it.
So. Yeah. Yes, and there's such a lot of trust in the online, but then how do pet owners or prospective pet owners get into it. I feel so fortunate from an animal point of view that I am, completely plugged into a world and a network where, we have a Labrador. Her breeder was a client at my practice, and I scanned her Labrador when she was pregnant, and I was like, she's a lovely dog. If one of these puppies is available, I'd love one. It was just so easy for me to buy a completely and utterly known prospect.
Yeah.
But for someone who just has no connection to our world, I think it is so difficult.
Right.
And people can ask all the right questions, but unfortunately the people who are breeding badly know the questions that they're going to be asked and know the answers that people want to hear. Right.
And then, just, okay, well, here's $8,000 and I'll just take my gamble, and that's it. Okay, cool. I won't keep you any longer. I really enjoyed this conversation. This was really cool. It was really awesome meeting you and meeting you in real time.
Fun.
Yeah, I thought this was really fun. Do you have anything else you want to plug? Do you want to anything you want to put out there as a final message? Anything at all?
I don't think I have anything I need to plug, really.
Okay. Cat the Vet on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook.
Yeah, that's me. That's me. I suppose, I would say to people, just join Dr. Cellini in his campaign against chiropractors. I think that's one point where I might lose a bit of professionalism, and because I think the way that you talk about them and tackle them is just phenomenal. I cannot believe that those people are doing those things to them. I don't understand how they're not getting their faces ripped off. I do not understand how they can think that what they're doing is in any way ethical or right or good. And I can't believe that animals don't come out maimed by some of the things that I see. So I think the work you're doing to raise awareness of that is brilliant.
Thank you. I can summarize my stance being that I think it exists in the gray area of placebo, and people just don't know any better, and they're ignorant to what is true and what's not when it comes to
the noises and the cracking. It just makes my hair stand on end. I don't understand how. I can't even imagine how they're managing to make animals make those noises without literally breaking them in half. I just have no idea.
It's either it's too, God, you're gonna get me on a tangent again. I was trying to but they're either causing a lot of pain for no reason, or they're doing absolutely nothing in the videos. It's literally, it's two options. And the thing that has been driving me crazy lately about it is the fact that when like a horse or a dog, they'll do an adjustment, and then they'll look at the person like any dog would if you just stop holding them, right? And then all the comments are like, "Oh, look at the relief on their eyes," and they anthropomorphize these just normal dog reactions to somebody just letting go of their face.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what are you talking about?
The dogs are so polite.
Some of them aren't. You can tell some of them are just like, they've about had it.
Yeah. The self-control some of those dogs have to not bite those people is extraordinary. And I would imagine that the ones where they have been bitten aren't being shown online. Yeah. But some of them, like you showed one the other day of a dog having a hip luxation replaced conscious, is out and out animal cruelty.
No sedation, no anesthesia.
Straight across the board. If that's what that guy was doing, then that is genuinely outrageous.
Yeah.
And I just can't understand how people think that it's in any way a good idea.
And then back to the point that you always focus on, which I love, is that always involves trashing a vet coming in. Well, the vet just wanted to do surgery, so we're going to we don't want to do the surgery route. Oh yeah. That's all they said, is like, we have to do surgery. I'm sure. Like, show me the conversation that you actually had with the vet. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you've got a hip out and it doesn't stay in, then you've not got very many other options. And that guy might put the hip back in with loads of pain, but it'll soon come back out again.
Yeah.
The vet is not suggesting these things for no good reason.
Right. Right. And then you never see the stories where things don't work. You never see follow-up. You never see before and after examinations being done. You never see the records from the vet. I could go on. And then
the next day in a wheelchair.
Right. And then, On the other extreme, they're trying to adjust 3,000-pound animals, in Africa and trying to manipulate a hippo's back or something like that. It's like, you're not doing anything. What are you talking? Like, what are we doing here? We got a sedated lion who you just walk up and just start pushing on its thoracic vertebrae.
I just think, do you not think that if this worked, the vet profession would have sorted it out and there'd be, qualified practitioners doing it properly, because it's not like we're ignoring a whole branch of legitimate science.
Well,
I think it probably would have been investigated and we'd have an evidence base for it by now.
Yeah, true. Yes. But I think, as with most things vet med, you can operate in the wild, wild west for a while before things become sorted out as far as like whether or not we should do this. So, I mean, you got vets today who are doing cystotomies and cesarean sections with no mask on, just gloves and jeans on. That happens all over the country.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
well, maybe, I don't know.
You want to talk substandard care? I mean, there's substandard care that happens.
I mean, you have the wild, but yeah, there is a spectrum of care. You're absolutely right.
Yeah,
but I think
and this is just on the far. This is on one part of that pie chart. Just total.
Yeah. But a small part of it, and it's still the chiropractors still need to check themselves.
Yeah. I've had a lot of people reach out and be like, we're going to contact the state veterinary board, but then I had somebody on the veterinary board comment and say we can't do anything because he's not a veterinarian.
That's the problem. We have that issue over here. Because they're not vets, they're not under the jurisdiction. So the veterinary authorities can't do anything. I do think maybe sometimes they could be a bit stronger in liaising with actual authorities.
Yeah.
There must be a way of controlling this.
Right.
But yeah, that's what can be quite frustrating, is if they're not a vet, often our regulatory bodies can't act because they can only act against us, which is what's so frustrating.
Right. And then you get into I got to convince like the government to step in, and like, good luck doing that sort of thing. So
yeah, and so it rolls on, and they get millions of views with the Rottweiler with its whale eye straight in their face.
Yeah, doing a full Nelson on the dog, and doing that whole thing. Yeah, all you can do is make YouTube videos. That's all you can do.
Raising awareness online.
That's right.
This is where it's at.
That's right.
This is why we do what we do.
Exactly. All right, cool. Cat the Vet, thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. This has been an absolute delight.
Oh, me too. I really liked it. Awesome. Take care.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Oh, everybody like and subscribe, DVMCellini and Cat the Vet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Gotta put that in there.
Stuck around this long and watched us for this long, you can jolly well follow it.
Harrison, edit out whatever you need to like speed it along. Do whatever you got to do, Harrison.